Welcome to The Buck Stops Here, the official podcast of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, The Buck. Kirk Buckner, the owner-operator of NotInHallOfFame.com, basically whenever you say a list sucks, chances are I'm the one who sort of set that up. So, direct your hate mail here. Today I thought we'd do something a little bit different, and through the power of social media, I made the acquaintance of Fonda Bryant. She's the daughter of Johnnie Taylor, a soul legend from the 60s and 70s and early 80s. And she's a little upset that her father, Mr. Taylor, is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I thought, let's have a great discussion about that. And that's exactly what we've got up next. Hope you enjoy it and come back. I have with me Fonda Bryant, the daughter of Johnnie Taylor. Many of you may not know who Johnnie Taylor is, but hopefully you will after this, and you really should. This man has got a discography very similar to that of Marvin Gaye, in my opinion. Very diverse, very long, and not as celebrated as it should be. Fonda and I sort of became acquainted through, like many things, through social media, and we had a lot to say back and forth on that, and needless to say, Fonda's a big fan of having her father, Johnnie Taylor, into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Fonda, can you tell us a little bit more about your father's career?
Well, the thing is with my father, in 1976, excuse me, he had the first ever platinum record certified by the RIAA, which is the Recording Institute. I'm not sure exactly what the letters stand for, but anyway, he was the first ever artist to have the first ever platinum record certified. And the thing is, that's history. Because back in the day, if you really think about it, now we can go download on Spotify, we can go to Pandora, we can go to Amazon Music, we can go to a lot of places and get music to help the artist get to that platinum status. But back then, you actually had to go in the store and actually buy the record. So you had to do physical, where you had to go in and buy the record, and that really meant to me that you were a true fan. And now it's just kind of like you just go online and whatever the case may be. And not only just with, having to go in the store to buy the music, if you really think about the history of music and the history of this country, you realize that those artists, even though Ice Cube sat up and kind of dismissed when he was accepted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, he kind of dissed the old artists. And the thing is that they did pave the way, because I don't think Ice Cube ever had to worry about being stopped and killed by white people or lynched or anything like that while he was out homing his craft. And that's what really made me mad about him getting in, is that he was just kind of dismissing these artists, and they had to deal with a lot. And as a matter of fact, that's how my mother met my father, because my grandmother was she was a gospel promoter in Gastonia, North Carolina, and a lot of the artists used to come because they were gospel singers first. My father was with the Soul Stirrers, so they would stop at my grandmother's, clean up and eat, because they couldn't go to the hotels or the restaurants in Gastonia, not only Gastonia, but the Deep South. So I remember the Five Blind Boys of Alabama, the staple singers, and if I'm not mistaken, all of them are already in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So again, not only did he have the first platinum record ever certified, he also had to hone his craft while he was dealing with racism and just how the country was at the time.
Now, the song you were referring to, Disco Lady, that was a number one song, I believe, was it 75 or 76?
I think it was 1976 it was certified.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So, historically speaking, that's a major accomplishment. A detractor might just sort of say, because it might get pegged into a disco genre, which is a very underappreciated genre by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that perhaps doesn't help him. But as you and I have discussed on the phone previously to this show, his career is far more than just that one song.
It definitely is, because if you go to that site, you pull up where he had Cheaper to Keeper, it was gold. You see albums that were gold and platinum. You see records that were gold and platinum. So again, it's not just about being the first ever artist certified as having a platinum record, but it's also about his body of work. And just that alone, between that, to me, the history puts it over the top. But if you look at his body of work, and then you think about some of the artists have leaped over him, their body of work is not even as strong. So I don't even understand what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is seeing or how they're picking these artists. I've talked to the past president and CEO, Terry Stewart, to Greg Harris now, and they all seem to, now Terry Stewart and I had a long conversation, and he told me how the process is that, you know, he was saying that the artists that are already in there get a vote, and then it's a group of people who pick artists as well, and everybody has to kind of get in there and jockey for who they want to be in there, but no one seems to truly know who picks these artists, and that's what's annoying to me. It's not very you just don't know who's picking them, and to me, it's a lot of secrecy around it. For all we know, it could be one person, even though they swear, you know, the public has a vote, or you know, they have a group of people. I'm just not sure, but all I know is my father has been eligible. This is year 26 years,
26
and
years,
hasn't
yes.
even been up for a nomination. You got other people who've been nominated in my generation of music, past my generation of music, who've been nominated numerous times. LL Cool J, Janet Jackson, all these other people who have leapfrogged over my father, and it's just not right. He should be in there. He should be nominated. All of the people he, if you look through some of his pictures that he was friends with, Percy Sledge, Benny King, Otis Redding, Aretha Franklin, Marvin Gaye, all of them are already in there. Why my father is not in there is just, I don't even know. I'm lost for words with it.
Now, there's been a lot of criticism, not by just fans, but by artists themselves. And again, in our last off-air conversation, we were referencing Steve Miller when he did get in, pretty much trashed the whole process. Recently, I don't know if you're aware of this, actually just yesterday or 2 days ago, Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, that band was nominated in 2015. Reznor pretty much called the whole process a joke. And that's someone who's considered very influential of the last 25 years. He pretty much said he could care less. Lots of artists say this over and over again. The Sex Pistols, most famously, just didn't show up. They sent actually a nasty letter.
Good for them.
Yeah, so I believe they called the whole place a piss stain. I could be misrepresenting that, but it was actually kind of funny too, because my wife and I, we went to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, and so they were doing the whole thing of all the artists, and so when it got to the Sex Pistols, all they just showed was the actual letter that they sent, which, I mean, hey, good on them for sort of acknowledging what somebody said about them. That's shows a bit of character, I suppose. Going back to that, so like, is there any other artists other than your father who aren't in that you think should be accepted?
Definitely. I don't think Ella Fitzgerald is in there. How you can leave her out, I have no idea. I think Donna Summer, is she in there yet?
Yeah, Donna Summer got in, but
she finally got in there.
Yeah, after she died, though.
Okay, so yeah. But, I mean, how can you leave out Ella Fitzgerald? How can you leave out, again, my father? And, again, as I have told Greg Harris, and he doesn't even bother to respond, and that's another thing that annoys me, because one year, the first year he came there as the CEO of the Rock Hall, he told me that he would lobby for my father. Whether he did or not, I don't know. But every time I would email him, I would email a guy named Todd Messick, who was the vice president of something with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Todd would always include Greg Harris, but he would not chime in himself. And I told him the same things. I guess me and the Sex Pistols and the guy with Nine Inch Nails have something in common. I told him they were a joke. I said, y'all are a joke because you don't make it transparent. No one knows really who are picking these people. I think Terry Stewart, the previous CEO of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, told me that Paul Schaefer, that used to be with who was it? The late night show with David Letterman. I think he was one of the people who could vote, but no one seems to know. So I just started getting very frustrated, and I started just letting them have it, telling them that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a joke, and the process is a joke. Because I agree with Steve Miller 100%. Because what I think is coming down to be quite honest, is I think they're a 501c, and they need to keep money flowing through the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Now, I don't know how many people come to visit a year or some of the things that they do, but I think part of the problem is that they pick people who can generate money for the Rock Hall, like when they have the Rock Hall inauguration thing. Of course, they're going to want people in there who are going to draw people to come and spend money on those tickets. Then you got that compilation, that CD with the compilation. So, of course, they want that to sell. They want artists on there who people are going to look at from all generations and say, hey, I want that CD. So I also told Greg Harris that too. I said, y'all don't care anything but about money. And so when I talked to Todd Messick one day on the phone, I told him, I said, with so much music being around, why don't y'all break it down into genre? Or have an award for people who have made history with music. Why don't you do it that way? Now, they thought that was a good idea, but whether they will do it, I'm not sure. But they need to change it because, as I said, my father deserves to be there, but I can understand Steve Miller and all the rest of them thinking it's a joke because that's what it's turning into. They're not picking by music. They're just picking on who's going to be able to generate, to me, the most money for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Actually, and I like your idea about the genres. They do have the early influence category. They do have the Sidemen category. They have the award for musical excellence, but they don't put everything in genres. So, like the 15 nominees this year, all representing very different genres. When you look at all 15 of them, they're not categorized. If whichever 5 gets in or 6, because again, like you said, it's not always the most transparent of processes. They're all going to go under the same category. And with no disrespect to, let's just say, Radiohead and LL Cool J, they're not exactly on the same playlist.
They're not. And that's why I said, to me, break it down into genre. Break it down into genres. Pick up, and then on top of that, not even just breaking it down with the genre, but how about this? Let's break it down with the. Let's break it down to something I was going to say, and it'll come back to me. But not only break it down into the genre, but as I said too, you can break it down to according to what they did. Because, for instance, like I said, with my father having the first ever platinum record certified, that to me deserves special recognition because he set the trend for how platinum records are looked at. He should be in there. And like I said, I get so frustrated. So when I talk to Todd knows about that, and I ask them how in the world y'all can pick rap artists and put some of these people in and leave these old artists out there in the cold. Okay, let's put, for instance, too, the Fifth Dimension. They haven't been nominated. They're there. They're just sitting there waiting. The Spinners, they're sitting there waiting. How many more years is it going to take? And those, to me, I listen to a little bit of rap, but those are real musicians. The Ohio Players aren't in there. Honestly, they played their own music. They wrote songs. They recorded them. They could sing. Why aren't these artists there? And then that's what I was going to say. Why did we just have to put 5 or 6 in there? Why can't we have a dozen? Why does it always just have to be 5 or 6? Why can't there be more than that? Why can't we not have 12 a year?
They're very inconsistent. That might happen in the future.
Well, the future is now, and I'm sick of it because, as I said, every year, as soon as first off, I emailed Greg Harris beforehand, and I just emailed him, I think, a week before the names came out. Then I emailed him again after they came out, and then when it's over, I always email him and tell him I'm going to be right back in your face next year. And they always send me these emails saying, "Oh, we sending it to the people who make the decision." Who are they? That's what I'm telling you. There is no transparency with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I think that's another thing that frustrates people. Not just the everyday people and the fans, but the artists. No one knows who these people are. And I've told you before, I think they put people's pictures in there on the table and a monkey picks them. Now, that's my personal opinion. I think they put a monkey in there and put some pictures up there and just let the monkey pick, and whoever the monkey picks, that's who they go with. Because it makes because it makes no sense. And if you listen to my father's voice and him singing, it's no way he shouldn't be in there. And as I said, they can try to leave out, like, I didn't even think about that with the disco era, but disco or not, you cannot take away that song was the first ever platinum record over the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Aretha Franklin, James Brown, the Temptations, all of those famous groups, and my father had the first #1 platinum record. So you can't knock that. I don't care how you try to look at it or put it in a box or whatever. He had it. So again, and then you look at his body of work, he deserves to be there. And it just frustrates me every year. 26 years. And he has been dead since 2000, so 18 years. So he was alive 18 years while he was sitting there he's been dead 18 years. So he was alive when his record was able to go in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and still be in. Because, it was 1992, and he died in 2000. So 8 years he was living, and they passed over him while he was living. And now that he's dead, I think if I really wasn't making a fuss, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame wouldn't even be thinking about it, but I'm making them think about it every single time that he is not nominated. And I plan on keep doing that until they put dirt on me.
Mm-hmm. Now, a bit of an elephant in the room, I guess, with you in this case. You didn't have that much of a relationship with your father, did you?
No, I did not. Isn't that something?
Yeah, I got that.
It's something that I didn't have. Yeah, it's something I did not have a relationship with him, but I still want him in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And this is really how I look at it. And this is really what I tell fans. I have been on 2 television shows for talking about my father. One was about the 2-year court battle that was very painful and very ugly, where I was declared an heir of his estate back in 2002. Then I was on Unsung, talking about his music, just the fact that he deserved to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and just his body of work as a whole. So the thing is that how I am able to do this and push so hard out of all his kids, even the ones who were with him and live with him, is the fact that I will never take away from the talent that he had. I have separated the deadbeat father, the father that was not there for me, the father did not help me, the father did not even send money to my mom, to the father who could get out there and sing and was an entertainer, dressed beautifully, and had a beautiful voice. So when I separate the two, I'm able to push for him to get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If I was just looking at the fact of the things I just told you about him in a negative light, that, he wasn't there for me and this and that, I probably wouldn't be able to do it, because I'd be harping on the personal side. But on the record side, it's no question he deserves to be there. He, we never talked. I mean, we talked when I was 28 years old. We would talk from time to time, but because of his addiction, we really didn't have a great conversation. A lot of times I'd have to end the call early. So, and the last thing that I did was to reach out to him when his grandson was getting ready to graduate from high school. And I said, listen, this is my last time writing you. I'm not reaching out to you, because that's not healthy. And I'm a mental health advocate, and I know if you keep going after someone and they don't respond, that's just not good for your mental health. So I wrote him in 2000 and said, hey, if you're not a part of my life or my son's, I got to keep it moving. And that's the same year he passed away. So, after all of that, and then going through the 2-year court battle, I was able to give myself peace, because to me, if I didn't forgive him for not being there for me, for not being a good father, it would have eaten me alive. And In 1995, for instance, I almost died by suicide. Had no idea that I had depression. It ran in my family. Thank God I never smoked, drank, or did drugs. Uh, Drugs and alcohol ran on my father's side, ran on my mom's side, the alcohol side. So um, when that happened to me, I realized that I had to do some changing. So, like I said, I kept trying to extend the olive branch, even though that was not my responsibility to do. It was his. But I said, you know what? I would still like for him to be a part of my life. So, when he finally, after letter, and when he passed away, they found all the letters that I had written him in the bottom of his closet. So he acknowledged what I said. And when we talked on the phone, he said, I know you're my daughter, but he tried to make excuses, which I didn't want to hear. So eventually, with everything that happened with my father and I was able to forgive him. And when I was able to forgive him, I really started seeing that his body of work needs to be recognized and honored. And that's why I have been pushing the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for decades to get him in there.
So let's leave it with this. What would be the 5 songs that you would want someone who's a novice to Johnnie Taylor to sort of listen to really appreciate his overall body of work?
Well, definitely listen to Disco Lady, since that was the first ever platinum record certified. The other record, my favorite song by my father is I Believe in You. I think that is a great song. It is for then and now. You can listen to it and get a life lesson, because one thing I will say about my father's music, it was like he was teaching people life lessons from the mistakes that he had made. And then like Cheaper to Keeper, of course. You hear people say that all the time, especially if they're going from through a divorce or anything like that. So Cheaper to Keeper. There was a song my mother loved that I still have not listened to called I'm Not the Man That You Need. She says that is a beautiful, beautiful song. I have never heard it. And a lot of people who love my father's music, especially that old down home blues, is Last $2. I think that's what it's called. So I think those 5 songs right there it's not only great music and a great voice, it's life lessons in my father's songs. And if you go back and look at some of his titles or listen to his music, it's like he's kind of airing his dirty laundry in a way and trying to make amends to some of the stuff that he has done. Because I couldn't imagine having children and not ever wondering what happened to them. Are they okay? Do they have shoes on their feet? Do they have clothes on their back? So I think my father, through his addiction, struggled with a lot of that. And then when he would make music, I think he was trying to help other people not go down the same path that he went down, and try not to make mistakes. Because if you listen to him in Who's Making Love to Your Old Lady, which is another song, or Cheaper to Keeper, not only is he singing, he's talking too. So it's kind of like he's a therapist of music, because he's like, hey, don't go down these, don't make these mistakes that I did, or whatever the case may be. So I kind of look at him as, okay, I made a lot of mistakes. I've hurt a lot of people, but through my music, I'm trying to rectify that and keep other people from going down the same path.
I want to throw one other song in there too, Soul Heaven.
Oh yeah, now that I'm telling you, I heard a story about that.
Oh.
I talked to Alan. I don't know what Alan's last name is, but he was with Stax Music, and he was telling me, because he stayed friends with my father years later, and he was telling me that my father did not want to record that song because musicians are superstitious too, just like athletes. And they said my father didn't want to record that song. And it wasn't too long after he recorded that, if you look up the timeline, that he passed away. But Soul Heaven, every time we lose a celebrity to that, my mind always goes back to that song, because it's like he called out all these different famous people that were in heaven, and now he's supposedly up there too. And then you got all these famous entertainers that have died since him. And I would say he would probably, if he was living, he would just keep adding on in the song who's passing away and who's up there in heaven with him. But I think that was a very profound song. And I think when people talk to me sometimes about my father's music, they bring up Soul Heaven a lot because they said it was like he really had insight, and it was almost like that was going to be his last song because he kind of knew that he wasn't going to make it himself. So, yeah, that was a very, to me, a unique song because he was singing it, but it was almost like he was letting people know that he wasn't going to be around much longer.
It's almost like when Johnny Cash re-recorded "Hurt."
Yes, and also I found out from the same person that they were saying, like with Otis Redding sitting on the dock of the bay, they said he didn't want to record that. They would say he didn't like the song and he didn't want to record it. And then look what happened: his plane crashed right and went into the water, and it was a dock right there. So entertainers, like I said, just like athletes, they're very superstitious. But I just hope, as I said, it's a picture that I love of my father with Benny King, Percy Sledge, Otis Redding, and a DJ named Arthur Conley. And I look at that picture all the time, and I'm like, man, they were all good friends, especially my father and Otis Redding, because you remember he sang at Otis's funeral, and he was also a pallbearer. And I look at that picture, and I'm like, man, all of those guys are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and if they were living and knew my father was not in there, they would have a fit because they're like, Johnny deserves to be in there with us too. Marvin Gaye would say the same thing. Bobby Womack, who was one of his friends, Sam Cooke, all of them, and even Aretha Franklin. Because one thing I found out about Aretha, one of my dear friends who wrote for Jet Magazine for 20-something years and retired, and he wrote the story on us when the estate was settled. And he said Aretha and my father were really good friends. From what I understand, she was at his funeral, and they said that when he passed away, she was singing somewhere and said she couldn't finish singing because she had lost one of her dear friends. So Aretha also felt like my father, I'm sure she felt like he should be there too with them. So I just hope that we can get him in and place him with his friends and people who definitely appreciated his music and the fact how hard he honed his craft. Because again, he deserves to be there. He wasn't the father of the year, so he definitely doesn't deserve that as far as I'm concerned. But as far as music and his body of work and the fact that he made music history, he deserves to be there. And I am not going to stop until he is. I'm sure every time Greg Harris sees my email, he probably has to take a leave before he reads it. I'm sure he does, but guess what? I don't care because he knows what I'm saying is true. And again, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame needs to change their whole way that they put people into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They just need to change it.
Well, Fonda, thank you so much for being part of this, and
hopefully
we'll chat again. Oh, no, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.